Okay, y'all. Inflammation. It's an inflammation proclamation. This is something I think we hear a lot about today. We've all experienced some version of it, whether it be an injury or a dietary result. Maybe you feel inflamed or kind of like, ugh, you don't know what's going on. A lot of marketing today also targets people dealing with inflammation. We have anti-inflammatory drugs. I myself had a herniated disc about 10 months ago. I was very grateful at that moment for modern medicine and anti-inflammatory drugs. I got a shot, and within 10, 15 minutes, I could stand up again. Right? That was kind of scary, not being able to stand. There's also inflammation in our joints. We hear about arthritis from wear and tear. We also hear about things like rheumatoid arthritis, which is autoimmune. And speaking of autoimmune, I was also diagnosed with Lyme disease over 10 years ago. And guess what? Another factor when dealing with the Lyme was also the kinds of inflammation associated with it as my body was fighting it off. There's some debate as to whether my body's still fighting it. So autoimmune diseases are a huge problem for people today. And then there's the inflammation that comes with them. And then, of course, because we talk about muscle building and all that fun stuff here, there's also natural inflammation after a workout, as our muscles are torn down and are now, hopefully anyway, going to be rebuilding stronger. That's the good kind of inflammation we don't mind so much as long as we are not overtraining and we're allowing room for adequate rest. If you've checked out earlier episodes of the show, cheers. Hope you have. I also gave my recipe for anti-inflammatory wellness shots. They're like juice shots, not the kind I got in the butt when I hurt my back. I take one of those every day. It's part of my routine. That's another way that I kind of, with nutrition, counter inflammation. You can check that out too if you'd like. So I guess the idea in summary is inflammation is all around us. Some is good, some is not so good, but we want to understand what it is and when we should intervene. So let's get right to the caffeinated what. What the heck actually is inflammation anyway? So quoting two studies on chronic inflammation from the National Institute of Health, a lot of our references come from there. Inflammation is part of the body's defense mechanism. It's the process in which the immune system is recognizing and removing harmful and foreign stimuli, and it begins the healing process. Inflammation can be either acute or chronic. There you go. There are two types of inflammation. The first is acute inflammation that lasts for a short time. It's characterized by edema and the migration of leukocytes. And the second one is chronic inflammation. That lasts for a long period of time. It's characterized by the presence of lymphocytes and macrophages. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And the proliferation of blood vessels and connective tissue. And as always, we of course will get you all of these references in the show notes. I always suggest you take a look at them. Inflammation, not necessarily bad. It's a normal, healthy response your body uses to rebuild and repair. Much like we talked about earlier regarding muscle building. If you get an injury, the reason inflammation causes the area to swell is your body is actually trying to get more blood plasma to the injury to help it heal. So the proteins can get to the injury and assist. The swelling, though it's uncomfortable, it's not a bad thing. It's a necessary thing. The problem we see with people isn't that they hurt themselves when they have inflammation necessarily. The problem is often when inflammation gets out of control or out of whack. It can have some disastrous effects on our health. There's also the effect inflammation can have when we get sick. Now, our body's inflammatory response is how it deals with ridding us of the virus or other pathogens that kind of made us sick. But the other damage inflammation can cause, that's something we also have to contend with. If you remember from our immune boosting segment, we spoke in depth about that collateral damage. And often, the not feeling well during being sick, it's not even the virus or the pathogen itself. It's our body's inflammatory response, hurting some of the good things in our body as well, while it's trying to kill the bad things. That's a big thing with antibiotics today. While there is little debate, I would think that antibiotics are one of the marvels of modern medicine and have saved countless lives. Probably mine too when I had Lyme disease. There's also the discussion of what else the antibiotics may be doing collaterally and how we can protect ourselves potentially from those effects. The gut biome becomes a big part of that conversation. I mean, modern medicine, there was a time where if you stubbed your toe and, got an infection, that could have been it. It broke my toe. And let me know also if the gut biome is something you guys want to be talking about more on future episodes. Okay, what causes inflammation? And how can we make some adjustments to avoid chronic inflammation in the future? Kind of the unnecessary kind. Number one, your stomach. My stomach, Charlie? You mean my beer belly? Well, yes and no, but we'll get to that one a little later. But for right now, I'm talking about your gut biome, your gut health. To be brief in this one, because there's a ton of science and frankly debate around it today, the gut biome, we want to highlight a few important things. There are basically two types of bacteria in your gut. Easy. Good bacteria and bad bacteria. When you have more of the bad bacteria, this can impact your gut's ability to bring what are called lipopolysaccharides to the liver to be processed. If they don't make it to the liver, or there are just too many of them for the liver to process, those lipopolysaccharides, they end up in your bloodstream. They're basically toxins. It's not good. Your body doesn't like toxins, and it sends white blood cells to go get the toxins, and now you're inflamed everywhere because your blood's everywhere. So on a bare bones, I hope your blood's not everywhere. So on a bare bones level, we know we don't want excess lipopolysaccharides, and the mechanism to make sure that doesn't happen is a healthy gut. So how do we have a healthy gut? What supplement do I need to buy right now? What food must I avoid? It's diet soda, right? I knew it was diet soda. No, no, and no. Unfortunately, the gut biome is as popular a topic today as it is controversial, especially when we talk about how to repair it. Probiotics are a huge thing today. They're sold today. I have used them in the past. I've also been kind of discouraged with some of the science around them. I'd love to find a probiotic today that does wonders. I don't know if I have. I am going to compile as much research as I can in the future, get you guys a segment on probiotics and the gut biome. But for now, I'm going to stay away from probiotics. Prebiotics, however, I do feel comfortable speaking about in terms of them being a surefire way to help your gut health immensely. What are prebiotics? How do we get them? This is going to be from the Mayo Clinic. Probiotics are foods or supplements that contain live microorganisms intend to maintain or improve the good bacteria, normal microflora in the body. Prebiotics, however, are foods, typically high fiber foods, that act as food for human microflora. Prebiotics are used with the intention of improving the balance of these microorganisms. First of all, this is another big reason why the whole carnivore, we don't need fiber thing is just a bandwagon I'm not going to get on. Agree to disagree. Fiber, in my humble opinion, is extremely important. Where can we find these prebiotics, i.e. certain kinds of fiber? Bananas, oats, apples, roots, artichokes, and more. Notice, not really talking about too much meat. I am linking an article from Healthline on great prebiotic food as well. Something you'll note again is as you recognize great sources of prebiotics, you're going to continue to see great sources of fiber. But is all fiber prebiotic? No, it's not. But you can bet if you are getting enough dietary fiber, a good amount, especially from plant sources in your diet, you're likely eating a good amount of prebiotics as well. Fret not. And speaking of the things you are eating or not eating enough of in regards to inflammation, the number 2 cause of inflammation, your diet. No, I don't mean that thing you go on once a year for 5 days before vacation to try to get your glutes looking good. How my glutes looking, Al? I love you, Al. You're just being nice because it's my birthday episode. I mean everything you're eating on a daily basis when I say diet. And why can our diets cause inflammation? Well, AGEs, or advanced glycation end products. Advanced glycation end products. That sounds like something Iron Man will have to go against in Iron Man 4. Iron Man's not dead, right? They're going to bring him back? You think they're going to bring Iron Man back, Big Al? From Science Direct, these are harmful compounds that form in food when sugars react with proteins and lipids during high heat cooking. This process is also known as the Maillard or Browning reaction. It might be Mallard, I don't know. It's a duck, I think. AGEs are naturally occurring and can be found in almost all foods, but some have higher concentrations than others. So why are these AGEs a problem when they're found in our food? Well, they're basically trapping proteins all around your body, and I don't mean in your biceps. And as a result, your body is constantly having to send white blood cells to those areas in the body, and it's having this constant low-grade inflammatory response. Again, there's that chronic inflammation for you. It's not acute, it's a continuous response. Remember, if I injure my ankle and I have that inflammation is occurring really just around the area I injured. For example, the toe I just broke a few days ago. There could be some inflammation around it, but it's really just around the toe. That's when it's an injury. When I'm eating all this crap food, I am sending those AGEs all over my body. That's causing an inflammatory response everywhere. And if that's my normal diet or a normal American diet, which can be kind of terrible to begin with, that means I'm in a constant state of inflammation or even chronic inflammation, which becomes even more likely in people as they age. Age and AGEs, they don't go together so good. You know that song, What's My Age Again? I'm gonna write What's My AGEs again. So what kinds of food cause this inflammation? What should we be most mindful of not consuming in large quantities or frankly avoiding altogether? Well, first off, processed foods are a problem. You've heard this before. They're usually a problem because of the high heats they're cooked at, which causes the AGEs. They're also often heated up and then heated again and then heated again. And this is the junk causing the glycation end products we want to be avoiding. Now, a lot of times frozen foods get lumped in with being bad for you as well, and they can be, but frozen food is not necessarily bad. You just don't want food that's repeatedly heated and frozen, heated and frozen. Flash frozen food, for this reason, is of course better. Easiest way to avoid this one, I think, is look at the food label. If you see 100 ingredients you don't recognize and oils that aren't natural, and it looks like something you wouldn't see out there in nature, it's probably processed in not such a good way. But if you found some wild codfish in the frozen food section and the ingredients are wild codfish, you're probably just fine. Look at the label. What do you recognize? If you recognize a good amount of it, you're probably okay. But again, flash frozen is better. Speaking of those processed foods, one of the things you're almost always sure to find in those processed foods as well is sugar. Sugary drinks, cereals, sugar from high fructose corn syrup, candy, muffins and cake, and ice cream loaded with sugar. Candy makes me dandy. Sugar is such a problem because high sugar levels in the blood can cause damage to cells, prompting an inflammatory response. That inflammatory response, by the way, is also putting you at a much higher risk for cardiovascular disease as well. So to summarize, I know this is something that you've heard this before, but you really want to be avoiding excess sugar and processed foods to the best of your ability. And speaking of sugar, we also know excess sugar causes insulin resistance, which of course contributes to weight gain, which brings us to the number 3 cause of inflammation, weight gain, or being obese, overweight, whatever you want to call it. You got a high BMI. Yes, if you find yourself dealing with issues of inflammation, much of the cause may simply be you got to lose some weight. It may be the fat itself. For one thing, fat in itself releases hormones. These hormones regulate inflammation. Some of these hormones are pro-inflammation. Some are anti-inflammation. As I am sure you were guessing, the bigger your fat cells grow, because we're usually not adding more of them, we're usually just growing the ones we have, the bigger they get, the more of the pro-inflammatory hormones they release as well. That's not good. There's also the issue of visceral fat, or the fat around your internal organs, that can cause your body to have an even more inflammatory response. Much like the processed foods and the sugar we spoke about earlier, that fat tissue, it's going to cause the white blood cells to go to it, which is now going all over your body. You don't just have the fat in one place, right? That's why spot reduction of fat isn't a real thing. Before you know it, abracadabra, you're inflamed everywhere. You're the dang human torch. Getting a lot of comic references in this one. Yeah, flame on. Flame on! Now, I'm making light of it in some ways, and I'm also trying to speak about it in layman's terms. But when it comes to metabolic syndrome with the weight gain, it really is no joke because obesity is considered a characteristic feature of metabolic syndrome. And the link between them has been attributed to the inflammatory process. Metabolic syndrome, of course, which we've talked about here a few times, It's a group of conditions that together raise your risk of coronary heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and other serious health problems. Metabolic syndrome also causes insulin resistance syndrome. Insulin resistance means you have more blood sugar or higher blood sugar levels. That means you're suffering more oxidative stress. Your body keeps sending more white blood cells to the rescue. That's the theme here. That's what keeps happening over and over with this inflammation. And now it's not acute. It's not even remotely acute. You're in a chronic state of inflammation because of what you're eating, what you're not eating, and what you're doing. And again, your weight, being overweight, can cause you a host of issues and diseases you don't want. The thing linking being overweight to these things is that inflammation. So we've talked about excess weight and mortality risk here quite a bit on the show. That's a connection, at least one of them. The bigger question is, how do I lose the weight? Well, I got you there. The good news is I've got a video for that. That's a step-by-step on how to lose the fat. And we talk fat loss foods here and strategies. And at the end of it, so much of this isn't just how you look. It is, of course, how you feel. And inflammation don't feel good. And all that other not good stuff that comes with it is going to feel even worse. So this hopefully will be even more reason for you to try to lose the weight you know you need to lose once and for all. You want to be there for your family and your friends, and you want to be feeling your best. All right? Last one. What's the last reason you are inflamed? Sleep or lack thereof. I have been teasing a sleep study episode I've been working on for a while. It is coming. But for now, I'll give you this. Inflammation can absolutely be caused by a lack of sleep. Quoting Harvard Health, sleep deprivation is a condition that occurs when you don't get enough sleep or enough good quality sleep. While it affects mood, memory, and energy, it can also contribute to inflammation. Research has found that sleep deprivation is associated with markers of inflammation, such as increases in inflammatory molecules. So why does sleep deprivation or not enough sleep contribute to inflammation? Some people theorize, it has to do with our blood vessels. So basically, during our sleep, our blood vessels relax and our blood pressure goes down. When we don't sleep enough, that don't happen, and that ain't good. Another theory is that the lymphatic system, when we don't get enough sleep, our brain doesn't function as well due to a lack of clearing of beta amyloid protein from our brains. And we don't want that building up in our brains. That causes even more inflammation in our bodies. It can also interfere with our future sleep as well. There are a lot of studies that a consistent lack of sleep can affect our immune systems as well, our immune cells specifically, which vicariously affects inflammatory disorders and heart disease. So yeah, we have the big sleep emphasized episode coming out. But for now, no, sleep can absolutely affect inflammation along with a host of other ailments and diseases you simply don't want. I recommend make sure you're getting a minimum of 7 hours a night. Me personally, I need a little more, but 7 sounds good. Great place to start, at least. I'm also sure, this varies from person to person based on your activity and your age and things like that. But I think the fundamental is people who think they're getting away with 4 hours of sleep a night, you're not. You just haven't seen the ramifications of it yet. So in summary, guys, we don't want excess inflammation. We don't want the not good stuff that comes with it. We want to be eating plenty of prebiotics. We want to be avoiding processed foods and excess sugars to the best of our ability. We want to make sure our body weight and our body fat levels are in a healthy place. And in conclusion, we want to make sure we're getting enough sleep. And bonus, again, if you want to eat something loaded with anti-inflammatory ingredients, check out our video with those anti-inflammatory wellness shots. Those things rock. I take them every stinking day. I love them, and they're really delicious. They are really good. So let me know in the comments, guys, how are you dealing with inflammation? Do you have a lot of inflammation? Where do you see the most relief? And are you working with any of those top 4 things I mentioned? And you guys have autoimmune disease? I want to hear from you.